This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. President Trump sitting down with Chris Wallace for a wide-ranging interview over the weekend. A lot of topics covered, including the murder of Saudi op-ed writer Jamal Khashoggi. The tape is in the hands of the U.S. government, the murder tape, as it's called. But it seems like... and
it's described as very graphic and disturbing, but
well,
what murder tape wouldn't be a bloody mess?
Seems like the president may have a bit of a delicate constitution when it comes to these matters. He doesn't want to listen to the tape.
We have the tape. I don't want to hear the tape. No reason for me to hear the tape.
Why don't you want to hear it, sir?
Because it's a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I've been fully briefed on it. There's no reason for me to hear it. In fact, I said to the people, should I? They said, you really shouldn't. There's no reason. I know everything that went on the tape without having to.
And what happened?
It was very violent, very vicious, and terrible.
I mean, so you're right. The details really matter. He was tortured and murdered and
disassembled.
And the Saudis have indicted 5 people connected to the murder that they're pursuing capital punishment against, in addition to the administration imposing sanctions on 17 allegedly connected to the murder that also connect back to
the Crown Prince.
MBS. And so does President Trump want to do more than issue those sanctions when it comes to the Saudis, or do we have to, deal with the Saudis as the lesser of many evils in the Middle East?
Do you just live with it because you need him?
Well, will anybody really know? All right, will anybody really know? But he did have certainly people that were reasonably close to him that were probably involved. You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
And President Trump said the CIA full report will be out tomorrow.
For more on this topic and a few other geopolitical matters, we're pleased to be joined again by Colonel Cedric Leighton, CNN military analyst and security consultant who served on the Joint Chiefs of Staff as well as the National Security Council. Colonel Leighton, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
You bet, Dan. Good morning.
Good morning. How did you receive Trump's comments on about the Khashoggi murder and on the regime in Saudi Arabia? What recommendations would you have for the president, given what we know about how Khashoggi was murdered?
Well, certainly Khashoggi's murder was one of the most brutal murders that any government has perpetrated on any of its citizens. It was a heinous crime. The president is in a real dilemma here, and what he's wrestling with publicly. It's very clear that we do have strategic interests that coincide with Saudi Arabia's strategic interests. The president has made it very clear that he opposes the regime in Iran. And the logical counterweight to that regime for many years, even predating the Trump administration, all the way back to the late 1970s, to the Iranian Revolution, has been Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is very conservative kingdom. It is a country that is seeking to modernize, and the engine of that modernization in recent times, at least, has been MBS, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And this is a classic dilemma of foreign policy, and it's really coming out into the open. In the past, you would have these things really hidden from public view. But my recommendation would be to pressure the Saudis to remove Mohammed bin Salman as crown prince and find someone else in the royal family to serve in that capacity, because in essence that person is going to be the acting king based on the health of King Salman, who is not as engaged in day-to-day affairs as he once was because of his health considerations. But this is one of the most difficult things that the president has to deal with, because you don't want a revolution in Saudi Arabia either, and that's a very, very difficult issue to deal with.
Right. I mean, this is not a unique situation for America to deal with, right? I just was thinking about this over the weekend with the interview he gave and, frankly, the release of Narcos Mexico on Netflix. Thinking about the murder of Kiki Camarena, the DEA agent that really in the late 80s, that really escalated the drug war in the Reagan administration to present. And because that murder was sanctioned by the Mexican government at the time, they did some things like eliminate the DFS, their sort of intelligence force, if you will, to appease the Americans. But it's not like we stopped dealing with the Mexican government. We stopped making compromises with the Mexican government. We recognized the strategic importance of Mexico, and we had to figure out a way to hold people accountable, but work this relationship going forward. And it seems to me we're sort of in the same position with Saudi Arabia because of their importance in the region, particularly as a bulwark against Iran.
Absolutely. And that's the real problem. I mean, viscerally or emotionally, you would want to punish them for the Saudis for this action, and it's obviously a very brutal murder. But the other side of it is, if you let them go, if you don't have that that connection to them, it'll get even worse. They will go completely crazy with their dissidents, and then the risk is, of course, that there'll be a huge social and political upheaval in that country, and that's another thing you don't want, because you never know what comes next if something like that is unleashed, as we saw in Iran, just as an example, from the late 70s, and that's the kind of thing that you have to consider. It would be desirous to not have to deal with Mohammed bin Salman, but the reality of the situation is that you'll probably have to end up dealing with him anyways, because even in spite of my view that he should go, the likelihood of him going is probably minimal.
Well, why did the Crown Prince order or allegedly order Jamal Khashoggi's murder? What did he do to him exactly?
Well, Amy, that's to us it would seem to be not the pretext for that kind of a reaction. But basically what Khashoggi did was he criticized the royal family, and he was kind of within that circle. He had been an advisor to the Crown Prince. He had been an advisor to the royal family writ large. And when somebody from that circle turns on you, I think the reaction from the Saudi Crown Prince was one of anger, and that was the reaction that perpetrated this kind of action. It is absolutely not excusable. It is, I guess, on an emotional level, perhaps understandable, but it certainly is not something that could and should have happened. You should have realized that it is far better to listen to a critic than to muzzle a critic.
Well, yeah. That's not exactly their policy, is it?
It is, yeah, unfortunately.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the report, observed the successful test of an unspecified, newly developed ultra-modern tactical weapon, according to state-run media in North Korea. Said that it doesn't appear that it was nuclear in nature, but I don't seem to have much in terms of detail and frankly, how much should we trust what's coming out of state-run media in North Korea? But how did you interpret that story?
Well, that's a very interesting situation. Clearly, it seems not to have been a nuclear device, because there was no detection of any nuclear blast during the time that Kim Jong-un was there, or even before or after that. So the way I see it is, it's probably some kind of either short-range or long-range artillery system, a conventional system. What the North Koreans are doing is they're removing some of their older artillery pieces, conventional artillery pieces that are targeting Seoul. So that's a good thing from a peace and confidence building mechanism. But what they're probably looking at here is developing some kind of a system that can actually replace the aging system. So they're in the throes modernizing their military, and this is one way to do it. They also have to keep in mind they also have to keep the military on their side. So the development of new weapon systems is something that will assure people that this is happening, and whether they're really developing something or this is just propaganda may not matter in the final analysis. The fact that the deal leader was seen looking at this and was observed talking about it, that is indication enough that they want to modernize their military and that they are looking at creating a system where they can safely make concessions to South Korea, to the United States potentially, and still assure the security of their country. But my guess is probably some kind of multiple launch rocket system that is available to them that was probably started even before Kim Jong-un assumed power.
And more comedic fodder for the boys, South Park boys, for sequel to Team America. Colonel Cedric Leighton, CNN military analyst, security consultant who served on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the National Security Council. Colonel Leighton, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
You bet, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer